So I took the chance. I was like 28 years old, went to the bank, took out a big loan, and I built this big ass truck that was soundproof
Hmm.
and convinced a TV series to give us a shot. And so, yeah, so I spent a bunch of years doing on-set ADR. I created a company called In the Loop Mobile ADR, and it still exists today. I started it, and a couple of other companies tried to start it out as well. Like I was the first mobile ADR stage in Vancouver. I hesitate to say North America, but I definitely was one of the first, if not the first, in North America. And yeah, we managed to get on the show Smallville, which uh in the late 90s just all of a sudden hit huge. It got big, got massive. And so we were doing all the Warner Brothers TV shows, and I was basically driving around to all the sets doing the ADR. And
Pro Audio Secrets, a show that helps you to find your own voice in sound. In this episode of Pro Audio Secrets, I'm talking with Shane Rees, owner of Bigfoot Studios. He's running that company now for 5 years. They provide high-profile Foley sound design and implementation work for international clients out of Vancouver, Canada. And prior to that, Shane was the head of audio at Vancouver Film School for many, many years. He established one of the first, if not the first, mobile ADR companies that were and are still recording ADR on set. And now he's running Bigfoot Studios, which evolved out of Bigfoot Foley. I'm on this journey as an entrepreneur slash freelancer, finding myself. Having the chance to talk to Shane is such a treasure for me. You will see in this episode, we talk a lot about actual stuff that we're doing and feedbacking each other. So he's basically mentoring me. So if you want to learn audio, how to get into the industry and how to succeed in that world of today, this video is for you. Enjoy the episode. Shane, welcome to the show. I'm really happy that you are here. I know you are a Foley artist. You run a company called Bigfoot Foley, right?
yeah, we're actually Bigfoot Studios now.
Okay.
We started as Bigfoot Foley, and now I renamed the company Bigfoot Studios because we have sound designers, we have implementers, we have mixers, editors. It's not just Foley. I mean, Foley is my love and my passion, but we've branched into other avenues of sound. So
So that gives already a little glimpse into your world. Can you explain that a little bit further in terms of what you do, where you come from, and also what your mission is?
okay. So you mentioned my name is Shane. I live in, well, technically in North Vancouver, Canada, but Vancouver area. And I own a company called Bigfoot Studios, and it provides sound services to visual media, film, TV, video games.
Mhm.
Um, we started out 4 years ago, almost five now, actually, as Bigfoot Studio. Oh, sorry, as Bigfoot Foley, and it progressed and evolved into Bigfoot Studios. Um, so my mission is honestly, well, I mean, to have a company that's successful, to work with really good people who care about quality, and maybe build the company up to a size that doesn't necessarily mean we're just located in Vancouver.
Mhm.
I don't want any kind of global domination or anything like that, but it's just more like I have a lot of friends and co sound people, like peers who live in different countries, and so if I can use them, as they use sounds weird, if I can work with them and it's of benefit to everybody, then I would love to potentially maybe even have a presence in different cities. So specifically Mexico City is something that I work often with some peers in Mexico, and we've discussed the potential of actually having a satellite studio down there as well. And yeah, so my mission is really just to hopefully have some success and retire at some point in my life. um, yeah, and I'm not sure if you asked this, how I got, like, how, so there's a couple of different stories with respect to my journey through sound, but specifically to the Bigfoot story.
Hmm.
It actually started at I want to say it was a NAMM conference in Vegas.
Hmm.
I was there with a friend slash coworker, because we were there representing Vancouver Film School. And Vancouver Film School is where I worked for many years and just recently decided that I didn't have the bandwidth to keep working there. So we were there in NAMM, and we met up with some older colleagues of ours, like not older in age, but we had all worked with them years before, and they were complaining about some stuff. And I told them how, my first love had always been Foley, and I would love to at some point kind of go back to it and do it more full time.
Hmm.
And as a side note, because I was working at the school full time, I wasn't doing much professional audio. And that was a personal decision to be present and around for my kids as they grew up. And so they were complaining about stuff, and I said, "Well, you should give me a chance when you get a sec, da 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 da." I have new ways of working I found that could be more efficient and things like that. And they worked in a very kind of, well, standard for film way of working, but the world had changed, and I felt like it was a bit antiquated. As an example, the Foley artists at their studio who worked for their studio did not know how to use or work Pro Tools, and I was like, "Wow,
Mm.
that's the first problem you have, because a Foley artist who knows Pro Tools can be far more efficient." Anyway, so that happened, and then I had a planned 1 month, I don't know what they would call that, where I spent a month teaching in Mexico for Vancouver Film School. So they have a partnership with a school down there called Tec de Monterrey.
Hmm.
And I was going to spend a month down there with my family, just teaching all the different aspects of post-production sound at their school. And bring with my family, because I was like, oh, if I'm going to spend a month there, just thought it was a great thing culturally for my kids. And anyway, we literally we left on the New Year's Eve of 2019 and landed New Year's Day of 2020 in Mexico. But before I left, that colleague who I was discussing that stuff with in Vegas asked me to come down to the studio and meet with him. And we were talking. He's like, "Do you want to take over the Foley for us? Because the guy who's been doing it forever is retiring, and we need someone, and I want to know if you want to do it." And so I said, "Yeah," but I had to figure out how I was going to do that and also deal with the school and stuff. So when I was in Mexico, I was talking with the school, and I'm like, "Listen, I'd like to do this. I think it's good for the school. I'll be active in the industry again, and blah blah blah." And they're like, "If you can manage and do it, then great." So I literally landed February, or I think it was January 31st of 2020 in Vancouver, and February 1st I was at the studio doing Foley work. 2020 was also the pandemic.
Mm.
And I brought a friend of mine from Mexico to come work with me, and he's one of our main Foley guys, Javier Gonzalez. And yeah, so we started doing Foley, and then I also brought in this guy named Tim, who I knew from Vancouver, who really wanted to get into Foley, and I knew he was good, but he just needed the experience of doing it day in and day out. And we started doing Foley for them, and most of the Foley was at night, so I would kind of work during the day and then work at night doing the Foley, just try to get us established and kind of get things working. And then the pandemic happened and everything went sideways. So I said, "You know what, guys, I had a basement in my house. Let's build the studio down there." And two things, of course, we won't have to work nights anymore. And number two, we don't have to worry about all the rules or whatever's going on. We can just work out of my house. So that's what we did. And then at some point in there, I was talking with a friend of mine. His name is Jeremy Wallow. He works for Sony Games, specifically the Sony Interactive Group or whatever it is called. And they were looking for a Foley artist, and I was joking, like, hey, maybe I should apply for this. And he said, oh, because of the way Sony was working, they wanted it to be an American or whatever. He goes, but are you guys willing to audition for some Foley? And we said, sure. So we auditioned, and then they were like, they love your Foley. Do you guys want to do all the cutscenes, cinematics, whatever you want to call them, for Horizon Forbidden West? And he's like, can you manage it? It's 12 hours of Foley. And I'm like, yeah, I'll manage it. Because we were slowing down with film and TV. Nobody was shooting anything. So yeah, I was like, yeah, no, we'll manage it. And then that 12 hours ballooned to 24 hours of Foley for Horizon Forbidden West.
Wow.
We didn't do any of the assets. We just did cutscenes, but we were like full coverage with like crazy kind of stuff. Any fight scenes, we did all the battles, everything. And then we were also editing and mastering it. We weren't implementing, but we were kind of like editing and mastering it. So I had like a kind of a chain of a team: create, edit, master, send it over to Sony. And then, of course, much like a lot of stuff happens, like the last 9 hours of the game came in the last 2 months or so, and we did 9 hours of Foley. So you were mentioning before that you were told that I had, different teams, and so yeah, I had 3 teams at the height of that working on all the different Foley. We had, a team in Mexico and 2 teams in Vancouver. I actually had 4 teams working at the time, and at one point I ended up with a 5th team at some point because I was getting calls. So I was doing that studio we worked for. They slowed down, but they started to pick up again, and so we were doing their Foley as well. And then we got a call from some studios in Canada that needed some work, and I was like, I don't think I can manage this at this point. And they were like, no. I was like, I got a team that's really unproven. Are you sure you want to do it? And they're like, yep. And I was like, okay. So that team got some work and experience as well. And yeah, so that's kind of how we blew up in that sphere. And then Sony said, we really like working with you. Is there more that you can offer? And I said, for sure. Like, I've been involved in the industry in Vancouver for 25 plus years. I was like, what do you need? And they're like, well, we need sound designers, we need implementers and sound people. And I was like, yep. So Sony and I started talking, and then eventually we were given the game Until Dawn to work on, the remaster. All the while we were still doing Foley for different studios and things like that. And then I decided that, well, if we're going to do more than Foley, we should just be Bigfoot Studios. So that's why we renamed ourselves. And yeah, so then we still work on Foley as like with tons of different people. We're working with a couple of different studios. We actually just finished the Foley for a studio called Servios that do VR games. And so it's coming out like tomorrow, called Alien Rogue Nation or something like that. It's a VR game with aliens. So that's cool. And then, we've worked with EA and Coalition here in Vancouver and stuff like that. And then yeah, so we spent a year and a half, I'd say, redoing all the sound for Until Dawn. We didn't do the dialogue, we didn't do the music because they hired a composer, and the dialogue was all original and then just remastered. But we were involved in doing all the sound design and the Foley and the sound effects, and then all the implementation and that kind of stuff. And yeah, and so here we are today, kind of thing. So we finished that. It was released in October, and a couple of my sound designers who worked on that game were, I guess, cherry picked to work on another Sony game. So I got a couple of sound designer's working on another Sony game that I can't talk about, and my Foley team, we're just finishing up a Canadian TV series, and then in the new year, we'll probably do some more stuff for some Servios, some Coalition, and just stuff like that. Yeah, and then the world is, it is what it is. Hopefully, we get more work. We're trying to get more work from around the world. I have friends in China that we're trying to get into some of their markets with and stuff like that. And then, like I said, I still have that Mexico connection. My good friend, like as far as like, a friend who's in the industry, his name is Alan Palacio, I think is how you say it
Hmm.
properly in Spanish. And he works out of Mexico City. His company is called Walk the Walk Foley, and he works with Martin Hernandez a lot, which means like really good LA films he's worked on. So I think he was part of the sound team that worked on Roma for
Mm.
and got a whatever nominated for an Academy Award. So he and I, we're always talking about how we can help each other out and stuff. So he has done some Foley for me when I, need some help and things like that. So he and I have, we just talk about how we can work together and help each other out. And that's kind of my goal, is to work with people that are cool and want to do awesome sounds, and yeah, kind of go from there.
Mhm. That is really a great journey that you just portrayed. So let me recoup a little bit,
Yeah.
that to make sure that I'm on the same page with you, that I understand you correctly. So
Yep.
you started in the industry early on in
Yeah.
Vancouver, and then pivoted into a career as an educator on Vancouver Film School because you decided you want to spend more time with your children. And then you did that for a long time, and eventually you got an offer to get back into the industry. That was around before COVID hit, and you took that opportunity, and now you grew this business, Bigfoot Studios, within the last 5 years, up to a scale that you are working now multinational with Sony, with VR game companies, with on TV stuff, on movies, and you collaborate with people in Mexico, and you have your arms reached out to China, and you're basically now building that studio up to a substantial amount and want to just continue doing high class level work with cool people.
Yeah, that makes it sound way cooler than I made it sound, but yes.
Come on. I just I just tried to condense it in the way that I understood it. And I really admire that. So can you explain a little bit how you managed the shift from being out of the industry to a gear that you are now not even operative anymore, but really on the entrepreneurial journey, and how you master that within a
Ah,
short amount of time?
so let me correct you. I have not mastered it, and I'll tell you a little bit of the story before Bigfoot. I worked so I moved out to Vancouver from another city when I was 21 or so, and got into a post-production sound facility in Vancouver called Sharp Sound. Worked there for 5 years, and then decided I wanted to leave. I was a mixer and did a lot of different things. I did the ADR recording, Foley recording, and all this kind of stuff. And I was really though trained to be a mixer, so I was a re-recording mixer, and worked on TV series that were being done in Vancouver. And I, would work crazy hours, and I had no kids, and my wife is a professional photographer. So, we were living that kind of life. And after about 5 years of doing that, I was around whatever, 28 or so. I just was like, I'm 28 and I want to do some traveling, and I think I want to try doing some other stuff. So I left Sharp Sound, and I had this idea. So I did a lot of ADR there at the studio, and they kept complaining. So a lot of TV shows are shot in Vancouver, and so what they were trying to do a lot of times is have the actor who's working on a show come down to the studio and do some ADR while they're sitting around for 10 hours doing nothing. waiting for the scene to either be, blocked or whatever, right?
Hmm.
So that would happen a lot. And then by the time, traffic, all that kind of stuff, by the time they actually got to the studio, they were calling them back to go to the set, and they said, "Man, we need like an ADR station right on the set."
On
And I was
site,
hearing
yeah.
that, yeah, I was hearing that over and over and over, and I was doing a lot of ADR, and I was like, one of the reasons why the studios wouldn't do it in Vancouver is because being on set is unionized in Vancouver, but post production isn't unionized. So I was like, well, I'm gonna take a chance here and think that a sole operator can get on a set and not worry about unionization because the studios don't want to be unionized. So I took the chance. I was like 28 years old, went to the bank, took out a big loan, and I built this big ass truck that was soundproof
Hmm.
and convinced a TV series to give us a shot. And so, yeah, so I spent a bunch of years doing on-set ADR. I created a company called In the Loop Mobile ADR, and it still exists today. I started it, and a couple of other companies tried to start it out as well. Like I was the first mobile ADR stage in Vancouver. I hesitate to say North America, but I definitely was one of the first, if not the first, in North America. And yeah, we managed to get on the show Smallville, which uh in the late 90s just all of a sudden hit huge. It got big, got massive. And so we were doing all the Warner Brothers TV shows, and I was basically driving around to all the sets doing the ADR and all that kind of stuff. So that was that. And I was also freelancing around town. Um, I was freelancing, editing, mixing, and that's actually where I got into Foley. So the day I quit the studio, or my last day of Sharp Sound, I actually was really good friends with the Foley artist, and I just walked into their room and said, "Hey, if you ever need an assistant, let me know." And that was like a Friday, and that Sunday I was back at that same studio as their assistants. So it was really, really weird. Like, I would go back to the studio I just quit, but as an assistant to the Foley artist. And I guess because I had been around Foley a long time, you recorded it and all that kind of stuff. This is back when it was recorded to tape, so
Mm.
it was a lot different. And I kind of knew what Foley was. So when I was their assistant, like my learning curve was super short compared to most assistants. Like I just knew what needed to get covered. I actually a lot of times would even tell them like they're never gonna play that in a mix. Don't waste your time, right? So I became their main assistant. Like I was just like able to kind of walk in and be one of their assistants. And then I guess I have some coordination. All of a sudden I was walking and they were like, here, like we're too busy, do this show. This is your show to do. So all of a sudden I was one of the people working on all that stuff. And I really liked it, but it was all at night because the studio there did all their Foley at night. And I just didn't know if I could do that. And then I started my ADR company. So all that stuff was kind of going on, and yeah, I was pretty busy, and then 9/11 had happened, and then everything just died. So I owed a lot of money for the company. There was no freelance work, and Vancouver Film School had started a sound department, and I applied to be a part-time teacher. So I started teaching part-time there, and I still have my ADR company. Nah, yeah, and then eventually they asked me if I wanted to be full time, and my wife and I were thinking about having kids, and I saw all the divorces around me and the messed up kids whose parents were never around because they were film people. I said, well, I would be full time. It made more sense to be full time at a school and that kind of stuff. So yeah, so then I still had the company, but I started uh I basically hired people to do the work, and I did a lot of the, liaising and stuff like that. And then I became a full-time instructor at the school. And then eventually they were like, "Do you want to just run the sound department?" So I was the head of the sound department, and I still own that company. Still did some Foley occasionally on the side, things like that. And then eventually I sold the company to a friend of mine. He still runs it. He's done a far better job of marketing it than I ever have. It's pretty big now. He's got like a couple of trucks and things like that. Yeah. And then I was an educator and then went on to then eventually do what I told you, start Bigfoot. But my point about being an entrepreneur and mastering it is like, man, I did a lot of things wrong the first time and figured it out, or and not figured it out, but like, okay, well, I'm not going to do that this next time, and I probably won't do that the next time. But there's still things now that I do that I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that, and I think that's really the point in some respects is just okay, you can screw up, and how do are you able to kind of like, you know, pick yourself back up and keep working on it and figure a way around it and you know, be sometimes fiscally prudent, like, okay, I just can't do that at this point, and can you put off those desires, you know, oh, it'd be so nice to have that microphone or whatever, and kind of work with what you got. I'd say I'm a very practical person, so I'm the one a lot of times with our team bringing the practicality to it. Like, you know, they're like, "Oh, we should buy this," and I'm like, "Or we could just do this instead." You know, like they're one of my team members is always looking at, "Oh, this stuff would be really cool to buy," and I'm like, for props or whatever, and I'm like, "Okay," and then I'll go on like, you know, in Canada, we use Craigslist a lot. I'll go on Craigslist and find something that's very similar for free. And I'm like, or we could just go get this, right? So I don't want to make it sound like I'm super cheap and stuff like that, but I'm like, there's just sometimes more practical ways of doing things. So anyway, yeah, so that's a really long-winded way and a bit of my backstory before Bigfoot about how this second go round, it's not like it's an evolution. I started and it's an evolution and it's still an evolution, you know, like we're really now part of the video game industry, and there's aspects of things that I've, you know, whatever learned from that I can apply to this and vice versa and all that kind of stuff. So it's an evolution. And one of the things I also learned when I worked for that first studio is the owner, he's, you know, he basically was a mixer who just started his own studio. And what I came to realize is that he wasn't some like business genius. He was just doing his best to, like, you know, not screw up and not outspend what he's making. And I realized that a lot of the time, none of us really know what we're doing. And it's really about being able to go with the flow, but have a bit of an analytical mind about certain things, and also sometimes willing to take a bit of a chance and just all that stuff. So,
I really hear
yeah.
you there. So, quick one. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. I will promise you that this stuff will get better and better and better from time to time. I already see the progression from the first episode to this one, and I enjoy it so much. So hopefully this brings the value you are looking for. And if it does, please hit the subscribe button and ask all your questions in the comments. Let's get back to the episode. I have kind of a similar backstory because I started out as a sound effects editor, eventually after being a rapper for many years.
Okay.
So then when I got into Foley, I already also had a couple of re-recording mixing credits. I did tons of sound effects editing, dialogue editing, all the stuff, ADR recording, and also a little bit of Foley recording, but definitely tons of Foley editing. So I kind of basically knew what I am looking for in terms of sound, and I knew what has to end up in the mix that it sounds great. And also coming from that, let's say, also engineering background, I wasn't afraid of Pro Tools or compressors or gear or whatever. This was all like, yeah, I want to touch this. Just being a Foley artist was a bit like almost not boring, but after I kind of grew into this, I missed being on the faders or touching anything. So then I started to practice and how to record myself, because I thought that is a good challenge, and also maybe financially it would make sense if I want to start my own freelance business, because then I can have, like, I don't need to employ a mixer, as hard as it sounds, but in Germany, the rates are very low, and I couldn't see any way to make a business run with a second person. So that was an angle I took, and I think I also got to a point where directors were really happy, even on a TV scale. I got feedback that yeah, the director really liked the Foley, like, and I just recorded that all on my own.
That's
It,
awesome.
out of a ADR studio basically, and with no
That's awesome.
surfaces. So that was a challenge. I enjoyed that, but then I realized there's no real way to do this for me with the client on my horizon. So I realized this guy just wants to dump me into my grave. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't went for this. Instead, I sold it to my employer that I can now record myself, so he could up my salary. I did
Nice.
that for a while, also in accordance with my mixer. He was a friend that we did an apprenticeship together. So I brought him on after my journey was already a couple of years in, because what I was doing, I was training ADR mixers to record Foley while I
Oh,
was
okay.
while I was figuring out how to do Foley. And that was just too much, you know. And
Yeah.
then I had one of my best friends back then and wanted to train him, but I wasn't able to differentiate between the roles. So we got into a huge dispute, which ended up
Mm.
in a breakup of friendship and work.
Oh,
And then I found this old colleague of mine who also continued all those years to be into sound post. So he was a very good mixer. And then we could continue at eye level. And then after 1 year, it really made click. We could
nice.
then do the stuff in the amount of time that was on the high level professional, like what the old guys can do. We could also do that with
Nice.
not too much effort. So,
Yeah.
and then when I wanted to record myself, he was also cool with that. He said, "Yeah, I can do sound effects editing, no problem. Just do your thing." So I could do that then for a couple of months. But then I found out, oh, this is really draining because the company fed me with work all the time. So I had to finish a 90-minute movie every week.
Oh,
And then that week after week after week. And as you know, when you do sound effects editing, you have a couple of weeks to finish a movie. And then you
yeah.
can have a couple of days where you're lazy or you're staring on your phone or you just spend time at the coffee machine or whatever. You can
Hmm.
you can make up for that on the weekend. But if you
Yeah.
only have 3, 4 days to finish a full movie, full M&E for a 90-minute movie, there is no room for I'm lazy today. I cannot concentrate.
I know.
So yeah, that was a bit of a thing, and then the opportunity with Ubisoft came up. So
Nice.
that was a year before Sony was looking for this Foley artist that you mentioned,
Mm.
and I was
Oh,
already then at Ubisoft as a senior Foley artist. Seeing this all from afar, I also reached out to them just out of
oh,
curiosity. Didn't want to move to the US back then, but just to know. And then yeah, my point is the question because now I'm freelance again and I now work on movies again, which I really love. So that was really something that was missing for me all those years at Ubisoft. And I also try to get back into games,
yeah.
which might work out in January. I have something coming up with Team Audio. Fingers crossed that we can do a little like 2 day recording here on site with the audio director.
Nice.
And now I'm in this space that I always wanted to be in. Yeah, I have my own studio. I'm a freelancer with these entrepreneurial goals. Yeah. So
Very
I see
cool.
myself in this position that either way, I cannot be a freelancer and an entrepreneur at the same time. This is what I just learned recently. I'm a bit puzzled. So my question to you is, do you also pursue like an MBA or do you do additional education so that you're more on the safe side for that scaling part?
Um, no, I never did. I contemplated at one point getting an MBA because just because yeah, like I wanted to legit. So when I was running the sound design department for Vancouver Film School, it effectively was like a small company within the greater company, and I was responsible for the budgets, and I was part of the marketing and all this kind of stuff. And so really like one of the reasons I was looking at the MBA was honestly just to legitimize my experience and be able to put those stupid 3 letters at the end of my name. But then I started looking like to go back and just, skip the degree aspect of it. You're looking at like a lot of money, potentially 60, 80K. And I was like, you know what? I don't need to do this. So I'm just not going to. And like I said, what I learned at the other studio is that none of these people know what they're doing. And I fully believe that too, of like MBA people, is that they learned how to run a company inside of school. It's a lot different on the ground. Like, as an example,
Mhm.
so so one of the things to kind of maybe give you a little bit of a like a pat on the back for yourself, or like, yeah, you're totally right, is like you can do this, is that when we did Horizon, the majority of that game's Foley that we did was done in my basement.
Mm.
So that's I don't know, I'll say like a $200 million game with the AAA status that, 24 hours of their like Foley was done in my basement, right? Like it wasn't some fancy studio they paid for. Like granted, like we built surfaces and soundproofed, but like it was done in my basement, right?
Mm.
And that is I think one of the things like I like to point out to people is like, yeah, you can kind of do it anywhere really in a lot of ways. But then right near the end, that climactic part, like I said, there was 9 hours that had to get done in 2 months. This would have been November of 2021, I think. And Vancouver got hit with a really massive storm. And they call them atmospheric rivers, where essentially like, we'll get like a meter of rain over a weekend and it just floods and stuff, right? And it's getting worse and worse with climate change and stuff. And
Mhm.
so this one was bad, and it flooded areas of the greater Metro Vancouver area so bad that like they basically had to go in and like tear down neighborhoods and stuff. But my house flooded, and it was the rainwater systems for my city couldn't handle the amount of rainwater, so all of their rainwater backed into my house,
Mm.
and it flooded our basement right in the middle of that climax. It was intense. Um, I thought I was gonna have a nervous breakdown. Like I really did. I was like, I have no idea how I'm gonna manage this. And I remember because so we were supposed to record that day, and my woke up and my alarms are going off because I've got like these sump pumps, and we go down in the basement and the water's just coming up and all of our props are floating and the surfaces like the mud's going everywhere, and I'm just like, oh my God. My two team members, Javier and Tim, show up, and we're like, just get his stuff out as fast as we can. And yeah, and then my wife was running out to find pumps so that we could pump the water out. And yeah, it was pretty insane. And at around 4 p.m. that day, after we had got the water out and got a lot of the stuff out, and we had these like massive heaters trying to heat everything up, I just like sat down, laid down on my couch in the fetal position, and just like, it wasn't like I wasn't crying. I just sat there in shock. And whatever it is, like 2 days later, I just kind of, I guess it was the next day, like I started putting a plan together. And then by like, yeah, 2 days later, we were up and running, recording in a couple different studios. And then I was like coordinating the restoration company to come in and fix the basement up. And it was just, yeah. So it was like, how does any MBA thing train you for that? Right?
Mm.
Like, it just doesn't. And it's really about your ability to hopefully adapt, not freak out too much, and try to make logical decisions, right? And I think be open to other people's ideas, and be willing to ask for some help. Like I had some help from a studio. They were super awesome to me. So we got to use their studio to do some stuff, and it's just stuff like that, right? And it was one of those things where let's just try to get this done, and we did. And Sony never even really knew that it had happened. Like I told a couple of people, but I said, "Don't worry, I got a plan." And um, it's kind of it's not a, it's not like this commonly known thing, but within the Sony ranks, the fact that we got all that Foley done and the situations that arose, there's some people who work for Sony or adjacent to Sony who are like, yeah, like these guys they'll get it done. If they say they're going to get it done, they'll get it done, kind of thing. So
Hmm.
we kind of proved ourselves even more in that respect. They dumped a ton of stuff on us. We had all these different things happen, and we still managed to deliver and deliver quality too. So
Yeah.
it was a big deal. And so back to your original thing about education, I think I look at it like, well, life is my education, and I kind of go with it. Um, I probably could have taken a whatever, not parallel, but like a different course in my life and been an academic. I'm very interested in things, and I'll do deep dives and read up on things. My oldest son actually asked me, he's like, "Dad, like, why didn't you just go become a physicist? Like, you just care so you love that stuff so much, and you get so deep into it and understanding and stuff like that." And I'm like, I don't know. I think in the long run, it's also one of the reasons why I'm attracted to Foley is I want to be moving, and I want to have some creative outlet to it. And there's a part of me that doesn't want people to tell me what to do. I mean, you are told what to do when you work in film and TV. It's just a different way, right? And so,
Hmm.
yeah, all that kind of stuff. And so I have a family of on my mother's side of like accountant or accountant like jobs, and I just remember going, I'm never doing that. Even though I was pretty good at math, I was just like, I'm never doing that. I'm never gonna wear a suit to work. I'm never gonna do that kind of stuff. And so that was part of it, I think, as well.
Hmm.
I also not honestly, I like proving that you don't have to be super educated to do things. I'm not putting down education. I'm just saying like you can pursue the things you're interested in, and it's about getting the work and the experience and doing it. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. So
Definitely. So, how many children do you have, and how old are they?
I have three children. My oldest just turned 16. My daughter, so that's my son. My daughter is 13, and my youngest is 9. It's a
Hmm.
boy. My oldest is very much like me with respect to wanting to know all those things. Like he does these huge deep dives, and he just knows the most ridiculous information that no 16-year-old should know. Like the GDP of Russia or something like that. It's just like he gets super focused, hyper focused on stuff like that. So, which is why he asked me those questions. He's like, "Why do you?" And it's like, well. So I think he'll be the one to take the education mantle. Hopefully, and he'll go on and do something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you come from education. You were an educator for many years. You ran even the department of Vancouver Film School, which is quite renowned worldwide, as far as I know. I mean, people come
Yeah.
there to
Yeah.
study and from all over the world. And the thing about the MBA is just something that came up with me recently because I was in Belgium meeting a team of sound people who got also really successful, and now they could even scale their business by acquiring another very traditional movie company from Belgium.
Oh, cool.
Just a team of 4 people. Two of them are sound guys, and they bumped into each other as freelancers like all the time for all those years. And then they just decided, like, dude, why shouldn't we do it together? Like we
Yeah.
should,
Nice.
we couldn't, we don't have to work for these people. We can do it on our own. We meet
Yeah.
every day anyhow, not in this studio, then in that studio. So that's how they started it. And then they
Nice.
got really successful and brought 2 other people in, and now they acquired, like a very traditional film house, it's even called, in the middle of
Oh,
Belgium with 30 employees. And they
wow.
make like sound effects. They have the biggest re-recording stage, Dolby Atmos stage in there. They have a big
Well,
Foley studio. They have even the film, the analog film. How is that called? Where you not copy the films, but you scan them.
oh,
And
telecine.
yeah, all this stuff. Like they have this guy there who works there for, I don't know, 25 years, and he did he did scanning and all these special types of work for so many movies, even James Bond movies, and
Oh,
like they
wow.
have all this heritage in there. And
That's awesome.
so I met them because they hired me for a cinema movie that now is the opener for the Rotterdam Film Festival.
Oh, cool.
So I was there on Monday and we had a meeting and he showed me around and I also asked him about all those entrepreneurial things because they are way ahead of me.
Yeah.
And he basically suggested to me that it would be maybe worth it to educate myself in that field because it helped him a great deal, for example, to get that merger done because he had
Mm,
to look into so many spreadsheets and
yeah.
due diligence worth 150,000 euros and dealing with all the attorneys and through 20,000 pages of due diligence.
Yeah.
So he said this MBA helped him a great deal. And he recommended to me like that I should also maybe look into that type of education when I pointed out my goals, you know.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
so I don't see myself in the position right now because what I'm planning to do is, if I may share that with you, maybe can give me your insights on that.
Oh,
So
okay.
so I want to build an online learning community for people who just graduated audio university because
Hmm.
I see this lack of people that want to start out in an industry, but they don't have the industry experience. And that's
Yeah.
the main point why they don't land the jobs. They have no idea what's going on. And the companies that are hiring at the moment, even for junior positions, look more for intermediates, which is
Yeah.
unfair, but that's the reality.
Yeah.
So with all, let's say, the industry experience that I could gain, and also my love for this type of mentorship, I want to just give that service out to people that they can spend a year with me in that community, and
Hmm.
I will transfer my experience in all the fields of post-production so that they get an insight, okay, that is actually how they do it or how I do it. I mean, I'm not want to be the main reference, but that they can at least get one angle they could then
Hmm.
make their own thing out of it. And
Hmm.
I want to bring in other people that have this expertise and that can represent the standpoint of the industry. And I also want to shove them a couple of projects into that community so that they can get more portfolio within that year. And I want to curate their show reel with them and also mentor them on a quarterly basis on a one-on-one. And this is something I see a lot of potential in and I want to go into. What do you think this is of value to people?
I
And what
I
is your
think it's
general thought about that when you hear that?
so yeah, no, I mean I think it's a great idea. Um Between you and me, I don't know how you would make money necessarily, but um like as an example, so when I was at Vancouver Film School, we made an agreement, Vancouver Film School and myself, and I built an Atmos mix room at Vancouver Film School, and it was my company. So my company embedded themselves in the school, and part of the agreement was for, reduced rent and stuff was that we would offer courses on Atmos, right? So it was kind of like a win-win situation in that respect. But further to that, what I would do is also allow them to rent the studio, because it was all sound alumni. I would rent the studio out for use after hours or weekends at $50 an hour, which is just an unheard of price for a re-recording mix room with a with an Atmos renderer and an S4 console and all that kind of stuff. And part of it was in for me, it was that was one of the things that's really missing for a lot of these people who've just finished school, is that they can get these indie films and they can a lot of times do a lot of the work themselves, but they're missing that aspect. Is like, where do I go to mix this and get a professional mix done and be able to provide that client with a like something that's professional, and then it's good enough to then put out to the world going like, hey, I this is something I did, and my abilities are here and I did it this way, and like, take a picture of themselves at the studio, whatever it is, right? So I definitely feel like, yeah, there's a missing part to the jump from leaving school and getting into the industry. Um, and I've had like different ideas. I actually at one point went and bought the rights to the name. I think it was Crew Call. I called it crewcall.com, and what my idea was like providing a place for people who've just left school to put like their resumes and demos up there, and like a kind of a whatever, like you're a community where they could interact with each other, and then allow them to like potentially get work with each other and stuff like that, and build that out of there. Because yeah, I feel like that is definitely missing from the industry. And then as far as the mentorship stuff goes, like I think that's always of benefit. There's in Vancouver, there's this place, an organization called the VPA, the
Hmm.
Vancouver Post Production Alliance, and that's part of their mandate is students who've just finished the school or schools can join the VPA at a student rate, and then get mentorship with some people of with experience and things like that. So I agree that there's definitely a lot of that stuff that's missing. Like, what do we do, and like, where's that community? And for a while there, Vancouver had this sound design meetup group, and it was really good for those students who are just graduating, and it was good for people who've been around for a while to be able to interact with that community, and things like that. So yeah, I think in that respect, it's definitely something. And like you said, now that you can do it online, how do you build it out and provide that missing service slash community that's needed. So I think it's a great idea. Off the top of my head, though, like, to be honest, like I said, I don't know how you would monetize it in a way that it doesn't seem predatory, to the people who are trying to get out of school and get work, and but it also can pay your bills, right? So that's always
Why?
the.
Why shouldn't it pay my bills? Because
No,
I
I know. I'm
I
saying,
see.
like, how do you price it so that it makes enough sense to pay bills, right? So
I mean,
I
in
don't
my
know if meals are like there in Germany, but Vancouver's so expensive. It would be you're hard pressed to not have to charge a very like a very potentially high rate. That how do you I just don't know where I'd have to sit down and really think about it. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to say is, like, how do
mm,
I make this monetarily feasible, but also really good for the community, and then also not overwork yourself, right? Like, you've already done that to yourself, it sounds like, right? So
yeah. So, you
yeah.
might, you know, I totally follow you. And from my experience that I had so far with coaching, I was completely targeting a different audience. So I tried to help professionals already
Mm.
to set up a modular Foley setup in their edit
Oh,
suite.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I saw there is a lack of
Yep.
availability or awareness that this is actually possible. I mean, you said that
Mhm.
as well, that you can do it anywhere if you know how to do it.
Mhm.
So I found actually a couple of people that booked that coaching with me,
Oh,
and
awesome.
we finished that with I don't know, 7 people maybe now, and all
Cool.
of them are successful with their results.
Awesome.
So I have that proof of concept already, but then I
Nice.
ran some numbers and I looked into how could I scale that now in the next year.
Yep.
That's why I kind of behind with the 2 movies I have on my plate right now because I took so much time into thinking about that.
Yep.
And then literally the second I ran the numbers of the best progression I can imagine, I realized this is not what I want to do because this will not take me anywhere. I can continue doing Foley and maybe do 5 mentorships per year, one-on-one. It will make no real difference. Um, so so then a director called, and I did a no budget sound supervision for him. His was his
Oh, nice.
first the first movie that he did, the first long format movie produced with his own money and crowdfunding, and he has a lot of short movies out there that even won awards.
Yeah.
And now this is his first long format feature film. So I did the sound supervision, did also the Foley, and I organized the whole team for him, including re-recording, stage, mixer, dialogue edit, sound designer, everything. And he was quite happy with that. And then he called me, and I started to encourage him because he was like talking about, yeah, how do I make a living with this long term as a director? Maybe I have to opt in with the TV stations, and I maybe have to adapt to their agenda in terms of what stories they want to be told. And I'm an actor myself for many years, and I declined so many roles because they wanted me to play the criminal because my father is from Tunis, and I don't want to do this. And I encouraged him, like, look, you did all these things and you can build it on your own. Just think about out of the box, and then you can tell your own story, which you already did with a full feature film. So what holds you back? And then he did the same thing vice versa, and
You-
basically, yeah, and then he pitched this idea like, dude, you have all those followers, you have already the trust, and you're not a scam. Just build an academy, build a school, and educate people because that is something people are willing to pay for. I mean,
Yeah.
you know that better than I do. People spending up to 50,000 euros for their education in audio. So
Mhm.
to answer your question, my price tag for this 1 year will be 5,000 euros.
Okay.
And that I see, and then I hope to attract people that are willing to invest that additional 5K because they understand the value that it brings for them. If I
Oh,
were in these shoes, that I have spent so much money, I maybe would be thinking about that, investing this additional part. And all the people that cannot afford it or they just don't see it and they would just do it for like 100 euros or something. I mean, this
wait.
is then not for this community. And so I ran those numbers and I
Yeah.
thought, even if I just find 20 people, this is already more than I could earn with this other coaching idea, and it would be way less work in a
Yeah.
way. And if I can scale it to 50 people, 100 people, 200 people, it becomes an opportunity for even a seven-figure business.
Nice.
I mean, this
Yeah.
is
I mean,
only in my head. I'm sharing this with you because you have more experience in the field, and I want to just bring it out there so that I don't, just cook with
yeah.
this.
Yeah. Yeah. No. I mean, listen. Uh, I am by no means like some kind of visionary who's gonna tell you that this is how you do it or whatever. I think for me it's like you got to try it, right? Like
I'm on
it's
it.
yeah, like I when I started in the Loop, that ADR company, I remember having this discussion with my at the time girlfriend, now wife, and just being like, no, there's a lot of money and da 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 da. She's like, you're gonna kick yourself if you didn't at least try. You're gonna be angry with yourself, so at least try. And so I am fully of the belief of that, right? Like I think that's why Bigfoot is where it is now. And it's like I gotta try this and and also be adaptable. Like, right now your visioning is this, and then a little bit of a left turn and now it's a little more this and it's actually better for you, right? And like with us and having now sound designers and implementers is like, like you said, like I did the numbers on the Foley and be like, honestly, that's one of the reasons why we've reached out internationally is like the rates in Canada and Vancouver for Foley, they're not the greatest. And I mean, I was probably making more at Vancouver Film School, running a department than I would be if I was doing Foley day in and day out kind of thing.
Hmm.
Uh, if we were just working on Vancouver stuff. So it's like, no, I gotta look beyond that and be adaptable and be willing to take that little bit of a left-hand turn or whatever it is, right? And so I think that's exactly it. Like, yeah,
Hmm.
like right now you're looking at it like this, but if there's something that you start noticing people are asking for within that, and you're like, oh, actually, if we just kind of built this out a little bit more like this, then it can definitely, turn into something you never even expected, but
Hmm.
bigger, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I think you have to, if you want to be a true entrepreneur, and I mean, God, I am not the guy to give advice on it, but if you want to be a true entrepreneur, you have to be willing to like, oh, see that there's an opportunity here, and let's just at least test to see if that opportunity is worth it, right?
Hmm. So
So,
what I'm doing right now, as I realized that that could be my new target audience, and I
mhm.
already see in my metrics that the most people on Instagram that follow me are of that age group.
Yeah.
So I just changed my communication, and now I talk to those people directly. I tell them, you finished your degree and you're not finding your first job. I can maybe help you with that. Just hop on a free call with me. And
Nice.
that works out pretty well. I mean, I just started that 3 days ago, and my calendar is fully booked. Like all
That's awesome.
like all the spots that I'm offering during the
Yeah.
day are booked. And I really like those conversations because people introduce themselves, and I get an idea of what they are looking for, and somehow I can give them something that they
That's,
maybe have not looked at. And that
yeah, yeah.
feels so good, that they really appreciate it. And I also said goodbye to this approach of I need value from that conversation right away. I
Yeah.
messed up one conversation very badly once, and then I learned that it cannot be of this, the value is with the satisfaction that I get from that the person gains something from it. And
Yeah.
so now, when we finish this and people are happy with their feedback, then I just pitch them the idea of this community, and I offer them to be a beta tester um,
Nice.
for the first 9 months. So I want to roll it out in September 2025, and until then, I give people the chance to develop it together with me for 1,000 euros.
Oh, that's great.
And I'm just in day 2, day 3 doing that. And I have already a couple of people that said, yeah, I would be up for that. And so let's go continue that road. And the thing in my
Nice.
mind that I want to ask you as well is, now I see this challenge. I put so much effort and passion into this idea that I just presented to you, and I also invested then even more time to execute on it so that I get it
Yeah.
rolling and that I get my experience with this. Is this something that is working or not? So that I neglected the two movies that I'm actually having on my plate, and I just did that because I know that the deadline is still doable. Yeah. And
Yeah, yeah.
I learned early on that I have to communicate with my clients.
Mhm.
Actually, in my apprenticeship, I learned that. So I'm in contact with them, and they know what's going on. They know, and luckily it turns out, okay, the deadlines are not as hard as I thought. So I'm
Yeah.
still in a place of ease, and I know I can finish it in the quality I want to. But still,
Mhm.
I'm feeling like this anxiety a little bit coming up. So, dude, you're just spending 18-hour days on this idea, and you're not
Mhm.
doing Foley. Um, uh, so where does this lead to? And
Yeah.
I already see this coming if I really want to follow my heart. I mean, I love Foley very much, and I love coming up with those results. But this is something that is in me that is pressing more because I see
Mhm.
more opportunity there. And I haven't done that yet. So I always need something that keeps me going.
Yeah.
And the goal of working on blockbuster movies out of this garage, it doesn't kick me as much as building something of value for others.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. Yeah.
And
Like,
So
I don't.
where should I cut? Like, what should I do? Because I cannot continue getting clients that send me movies and then not being able to do it because my head is somewhere else.
Well, you find someone who wants to apprentice with you, and you help them get better at Foley, and you still get the gig, but your name is associated with it, so you have to oversee it. I mean, that's kind of what I've had to do. I mean, I don't do much, if any, Foley anymore. I don't have time when I'm, dealing with clients and now social media and, things like that. Or lately with the city of Burnaby, which is where my studio is, because you got to deal with permits and everything, and so a lot of times, yeah, you don't necessarily have the time, but building the name and the value, like, you know what I mean? Like you know, one of the things that was true, I think it's changing now, but was true of the Foley side of it was that they were coming to it because of me. They weren't coming because it was called Bigfoot Foley. But I've been pretty good now at being able to like pull back and let the other people do the work and let the name become whatever, the reputation. So I think that's kind of what you need to do in that respect. If you want to still get Foley gigs, I think you can still, help out on the feed or whatever, but have that person who's working with you. And sure, you might not be making as much money off the Foley in the beginning, but you start to recognize that it's about, and I hate to say this because it's definitely, a marketing coined term, is it's about your brand more than it is about you actually doing all the work.
Mm.
And I say this to a lot of people, is like, listen, I'm, there are people who could easily do what I do as far as like Foley or whatever else goes. So it's not like I'm bringing some huge thing. Like my Foley artists are great, but what you're doing though is you're saying we really like the brand of Bigfoot Studio, and we want to work with that more, and sure, originally it was work with you, but now it's like, okay, the people I have surrounded myself with are people that I think have the same values as I do with respect to our work, that they feel comfortable talking with them. And a big part of that, like you're saying, communicating with your clients, is I make sure that my people can communicate with the clients too,
Mm.
right? Like, um, I remember that when I worked at that first studio way back when I was in my early 20s, they really sheltered us from like interacting with the clients. It was really just a couple of handful of people, and it's a disservice in my opinion to that. And it's like one of the things that I always lamented at the school is that we weren't able to give them what I call soft skills, which is, how do you work with a client? How do you deal with a client? How do you message, like, how do you communicate with a client about stuff, right? So, and every client's potentially different. So, it's definitely something I think needs work, period. From all schools or whatever, and even yourself in life, I had to learn it. And then with respect to, you and your company and what your vision is like, okay, you can't do everything yourself. It's definitely something I had to learn. Can't do everything yourself, and you have to, my friend always says, you have to hire the generals that you trust. Put your trust in the generals to do their job, and if they're doing their job well, then you can concentrate on the things you need to concentrate on, and hopefully those are things you want to as well. And then, yeah, and then you can hopefully build it up.
Mm.
Um, that's kind of where I'm at. Like, yeah, like I said, like I could be doing the Foley right now that I, 2 rooms over, I've got people working on. And there's a part of me that wants to, but there's that other part of me going, oh, well, this is probably a better use of your time right now, because yeah, you have a bunch of followers, and if somebody notices us, then great, that kind of stuff. Or, this morning I was talking with the sound designers about the game they're working on, and just, okay, well, do we need to communicate with the client at all? That kind of stuff. So it's probably a better use of my time in the long run if I want to keep the ball rolling, as it were, right?
Mm.
So yeah.
Shane, thank you very much for that conversation.
No,
It's such a great value for me, and that you also said now that it is a better use of your time right now to talk to me because I have these followers really means a lot to me. And
oh,
to me, it is also the value I get from a conversation with you is just immensely, like I cannot really put that in words, how much it means to me, and also how much it pushes me and energizes me. So thank you very much for sharing that. Um, I really appreciate it, and I wish
not
you
a
all the
problem.
best for your things to come, and that you have all the things that as you want to, and that other things come to you that you didn't expect, and that you have fun on the ride.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope you too. I hope everything works out the way you want it. And if it doesn't, the way it works out is still something you enjoy, right? So,
Thank you.
and yeah, let's keep in touch. So,
Definitely.
yeah, awesome.
Thank you very much for staying up until the end. This episode was so valuable to me personally because I could get feedback from someone who already did what I want to do in a way. And I hope it brings you the same amount of value that it brings to me. And I'm so happy that we can do this now with YouTube and the possibilities we have with the internet. Thank you very much for being within the audience. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. Follow along if you listen or watch this. You can always reach me via DM on Instagram. And if you are interested in a mentorship program that actually brings you knowledge about the industry and how it actually works, so you're just finished your studies and you want to have a mentorship that brings you into the industry, I cannot guarantee that, but I can share all the stuff that I know about the industry, then just comment industry and I will get you the details and we can have a free one-on-one call if you want. See you in the next video. Peace, the Foley Teacher.